Take a step back with me, for example. If this show had come out and it had no relationship whatsoever to superpowers or to the MCU, would you actually have watched it? Would you rewatch it as well? I feel like a lot of people would say no.
Do you remember Gerald Depardieu in 1001 Puppy Dogs? He called them the puppies. The puppies, look at the puppies, the little puppies.
No! God, please, no! No!
Welcome back to Torn Apart, and today we're doing something that we do all the time. We're talking about a new MCU show, and very often I end up watching the first episode and trying to guess where everything is going. I actually have an entire series on my channel based on this concept, but it turns out they decided to release the entire season in just one day, like they did basically for Echo a couple of years ago. It's part of the Marvel Spotlight kind of like brand, like Werewolf by Night and Echo, and maybe even Daredevil at the end of the day. It's not really clear exactly what it's supposed to be, but I think what it mostly means is that it's not deeply like tied to the chronology of the MCU like many other shows and movies. Basically, you can watch this without knowing anything about the MCU. They give you as many details as possible. They recontextualize a lot of things, and maybe you're not gonna care about certain characters as much if you are a Marvel fan or if you're just a random person being summoned in the middle of the street. But at the end of the day, this is a series for everyone. It doesn't have that many stakes, and it's actually really enjoyable.
What?
So let's start, let's break it down. What is it about, who made it, who are the actors involved, and most importantly, is it a recommendation coming from me? Is it worth your time, or is it yet again Disney Plus slop? Let's find out. The series was created by Destin Daniel Cretton, who is the director of Shang-Chi and also Spider-Man Brand New Day, which is coming out in just a couple of months. And basically it follows Simon Williams, who is trying to learn the lead role in a remake film called Wonder Man, along with Trevor Slattery, who is basically his friend, who he meets randomly at the cinema. And if you don't remember, the last time that we actually saw Trevor, aka the Mandarin, was back in Shang-Chi as well, so in 2021, because basically he was broke out of prison. And if you don't remember, he was the main character in Iron Man 3 as well. He's part of that infamous plotline where he was basically an actor playing the Mandarin, and he was basically some kind of scapegoat for the real villain. So the Iron Man and the media would focus on him instead of what the other actual villain was doing. In my opinion, it was definitely one of the worst plot twists ever made, like in the history of the MCU. And I don't know why they keep trying to spoon feed us this character over and over again. This is probably the only part of the story where he fits. Ben Kingsley gives a very interesting performance in this series here, and it's an interesting duo if you combine it with Yahya Abdul Matee II, who is a really good actor. Like lately he's been doing a lot of interesting stuff with Aquaman, but he also played Dr. Manhattan in HBO's Watchmen, so he has a lot of gravitas. He's one of those actors that can play very soft and kind of like deadpan characters, but he has an intensity to him that is quite interesting that you can see through the surface in this series as well. So even if I don't want to spoil this series in the beginning part of this review, I have to tell you that basically this character here, he has superpowers. You can see it in the trailer. It's not a big spoiler, but this is what I'm talking about. This is the tension. This is like the anger building up in him, and all of his anxieties basically coming forward in this kind of destructive force that is basically his superpowers. It's interesting. The trailer, to be honest, sold me to it. The entire concept kind of reminds me of things like La La Land, or even things like last year's The Studio, but done in a different way. Like the episodes are quite short, 30 minutes long. This is an 8-episode season. This would never have worked on a weekly release schedule. Never. Like honestly, like I binge watched it like a couple of days ago, and if I didn't, I probably would have forgotten to watch it like around episode 3 or 4, if you know what I mean. And it's not one of those series that makes you like wake up in the morning, be like, oh, I should watch this before I get spoiled. And I'm not saying that every single series needs to be that way, but I'm saying that there is a precedent consistent when it comes to MCU shows, and very often when they end up dropping these seasons on one go, it's not a good sign. Echo was one of the most forgettable seasons out there. I still give it a positive review, but for me, it's still one of those things that maybe didn't really need to exist at the end of the day. And maybe same thing goes with Wonder Man. Like, I enjoyed it. I think it definitely has the best performances maybe in the MCU. It's one of the most normal looking MCU shows you've probably ever seen, especially because now we are in phase 6 of the MCU. Like, at this point, our expectations are mid to high, as in, like, if you're not making the most interesting, the weirdest show possible out there, I really don't understand why it needs to exist. So even though I think that I agree with a lot of critics out there and with the audiences as well, this is one of those like TV shows that I define as slop, because it's to be forgotten in just a couple of weeks, if not even months. There is nothing that interesting when it comes to the cinematography or even the soundtrack. There is nothing interesting when it comes to the concept of the show as well. I was trying to see basically how to sum up this series while giving you like spoilers, but at the end of the day, there's not that much happening from one episode to the next. There is a really cool episode called Doorman, so maybe spoiler alert just to tell you what it is about. And it's probably the best episode in the season because it basically like establishes the idea that superpowered people cannot act in movies and in Hollywood anymore because of an accident that happened with a superpowered being called Doorman. Basically accidentally found these cosmic powers that turned him basically into a person who could go through walls, and he can bring people through him through walls as well. And there's this one guy who basically gets stuck inside of him, a famous actor, Josh Gad, and because of that, like, he gets cancelled, and there is this new legislation probably put together by the Center of Damage Control as well, which is one of the main villains in this show here. It's in black and white. It's really entertaining. It's probably the only thing that gets closer and closer to what the studio was about, basically giving you a really interesting take on the Hollywood lifestyle. It makes it more intimate. It makes it more emotional as well. It's not like the classic things that you always hear about in big budget movies, but it's only one episode, and it cuts the pacing so abruptly. I was sitting there being like, this would have been a perfect kind of like marketing thing. If they reduced the timeline of this and made it almost like 10 minutes, maybe, it could have been a short film to actually like give us more context about what this series was going to be about, and to just market the show, like some kind of guerrilla marketing. They should just have dropped it on Disney Plus, being like, look what's here. Oh, and this is related to Wonder Man, which is coming out next week. I feel like it should have been like that instead of like being released in the middle of a season that is dropped all at once. And my main problem is also that it's not really saying anything new about the craft of acting. I'm gonna talk about the studio once again because I feel that show is actually something interesting to say. It's very cynical. It's very, very fun. It talks about long takes. It talks about like the technical part as much as the acting and the marketing, the promotional material and everything. Well, I feel like this show here is doing everything that you expected from it. Like, there is an entire episode where basically there is another call to all the actors who are auditioning for the movie Wonder Man, and they're basically like improvising for the sake of this like art house indie director who wants to shake something like more intimate and private from them that is not related to portraying the main character of the movie and the script itself. And I was sitting there being like, yeah, but this has been done over and over again. There is this Spanish film called Competencia Oficial. I think Antonio Banderas and Penelope Cruz are in it, and it's one of those movies that are so good at basically showing the craft, at showing like different egos coming one against the other. I'm just saying it's been done before, so for me it was nothing interesting. And when I think about it, just being like a well-written show with interesting dialogues, good pacing and interesting characters, it's not enough within the MCU. Like, take a step back with me, for example. If this show had come out and it had no like relationship whatsoever to superpowers or to the MCU, would you actually have watched it? Would would you rewatch it as well? And I feel like a lot of people would say no, because there's nothing that actually makes this stand out as much as the link with the MCU, the link with Phase 6, the link with Avengers Doomsday that is coming out at the end of the year. So I feel like this show, even though it's good, it's gonna be completely killed by expectations and by the fact that it's just not very memorable. And by saying this, I'm not saying that they shouldn't make these kind of like low budget, low stakes stories within the MCU. I'm just saying that I need to actually feel like we are in the MCU. Like, there were not that many references. There were a couple of images like concerning Captain America, for example. There were a couple of mentions, of course, to the Center of Damage Control that we've seen previously in other MCU projects. But at the end of the day, I wish there was more. I wish maybe you could see other, for example, actors turn the superheroes in the movie. I wish basically that they took advantage of the MCU universe way more. Even the fact that it was taking place in Hollywood, you could have seen like a lot of things when it comes to shooting, for example, with special effects and using magic instead of special effects, and having characters being there being like, I should be saving the world right now, why are you using my powers to do this kind of crap? I don't know, I feel like there could have been so many more interesting ways of doing it. And when I put it back against Ironheart, for example, which came out last year, Ironheart at least was ambitious and it was trying to showcase something different. Well, this show here just feels like any random show that you could see on any random streaming platforms.
I'm sorry, what are these for?
It's free food. Actors, free food. It's a well-known equation.
So this is why I'm like, this feels like slop. This doesn't really feel like something worth your time or worth watching, especially if you go in with expectations coming from the MCU. At the end of the day though, are you gonna enjoy it? I'm pretty sure you're still going to enjoy it because there's still some quite fun stuff. And I feel like the superpowers that Wonder Man has are interesting to explore, even though they never do it. They actually treat them as a plot device which manifests themselves when it's needed, and we don't know where they come from. So we don't have any access to his backstories and how he became enhanced. We don't know if he's a mutant, for example, and we have no idea how he managed to control them, because at the end of the final episode it is showcased that basically he used his artistic like actor powers and his actual superhero powers to go back and save Trevor and break him out of prison. And that is a really cool like part of the season, but we never showed him like master these superpowers. Basically, the entire season should also have been about him trying to control his anger, control his stress, so that he doesn't explode anymore, and so he isn't basically a danger to the people around him. But this series is not about that at all. In fact, it's not addressing the superpowers at all. There is even a moment where he showcases them for a first time in front of Trevor, and he's like, we don't have to talk about them. And he's like, okay, yeah, cool, let's not talk about them. And we don't really get anything more than that. Like, this is a series that is really about the craft of acting. It's about the idea of playing someone else because you hate yourself so much. That concept is actually well explored in this series here, and this is why when the director basically asks him to show something genuine to Simon, he's unable to do so, and he pushes himself to do parodies of other scenes that have worked in other movies in the past, because he's unable to access that intimate part of him because he's scared of it, because he's afraid of showing the real himself. And this is interesting, but I feel like it should have been even more psychological then, because there are so many things that are happening where it's just filling up time. There is this moment, for example, where there is this group of thugs who goes against Trevor, and Simon is basically forced to use his superpowers, and there is this other guy who is passing by and he shot everything with his GoPro, and they have to like follow him around, try to get his GoPro back, and then the guy is like, we're gonna delete the file if you actually steal my bike from me. Then we have to go to the people who actually have stolen the bike and we have to talk to them, but it's actually a big misunderstanding. Why are we doing this? Like, at the end of the day, it feels like we're wasting time. This is not what the story is about. Honestly, if we have to rank this among the MCU, it will still be quite high, but mostly because the MCU shows have been quite bad. Actually, let's have a look at the ranking and see where I would put this. So to keep you up to date, on first place I put WandaVision, then we've got Loki, Agatha All Along, Daredevil Born Again Season 1, and then I would probably put Wonder Man. And then everything else. So we've got Miss Marvel, Echo, Moon Knight, Ironheart, and all of the other ones after that are basically like complete and utter crap that is just not redeemable and not worth your time at all. So it's technically in the top 5 of the best MCU shows ever, but it's not saying a lot. And you know, like, you're probably sitting there being like, you're playing Negative Nancy, like, this is still a very good attempt at making a normal, well-made show. And I agree with that, but we need to expect more from them. Come on, like, look at, for example, the new Game of Thrones show, which has come out on HBO Max. That is a real show with interesting things to say and the budget behind it, and you go to every single episode and you're excited to see what's going to happen next. So our expectations need to be high because there is way too much wasted time on our streaming era, and we spend too much time watching crap that is not worth our time. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of it, and of course we're gonna tune back in with a lot of other MCU shows in the future. For the meantime, here at the bottom I'm gonna be linking you all of the other videos where I talked about these shows and movies. I covered most of them at the end of the day, and it's quite fun every single time. Don't forget to smash that like button every single time that you do that. You make sure that an actor out there with superpowers gets the recognition that he deserves.
Can I count on you?
Even though maybe he has really weird superpowers. Actually, now that I think about it, if they embrace the weirdness of it, if this was kind of like a Doom Patrol kind of show, it would have been way more interesting, because the Doorman episode had the potential of being that, and I wish there was more of it, but there wasn't at the end of the day. I'm Patrick, and this is Torn Apart.
Back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show.
Let's start by taking control of our breathing and counting to 4,000. I'll make you think I'm a werewolf, or a congressman, or a Tickle Me Elmer. For more information, follow the instructions on the screen.